I feel Oda was not that good at laying out who was the culprit. And I feel this is an unnecessary plot. Because the real conflict is gonna play out the moment Saint Jupiter of the Five Elders is arriving. Because as we know, there was a hierarchy established. This was so meticulously and so deliberately laid out multiple times. Actually, it was in an information window, in a small information box in the manga, laid out, explained, and highlighted 2 times by characters explicitly that there is this hierarchy, and this has even reason for CP0, specifically Rob Lucci's action against Sentomaru, taking him down to seize control over the Seraphim, only to have Seraphim taken back by Vegapunk. And then now the Seraphim acting against the other Vegapunks or Vegapunk and the Straw Hats again. But this chain of hierarchy and the switch in who's seizing and who's having owner or control over the Seraphim, that this is switching around, this had been highlighted to be very important, and it will be very, very interesting to see what will happen once Saint Saturn arrives, because all of this plot, this play, is basically irrelevant, because we know Saint Saturn is approaching, and he'd be, according to the established hierarchy, the one with the highest authority over the Seraphim either way. So it's completely irrelevant who's the traitor, which Vegapunk did what, why, and whatever way. Because we know someone with a higher authority over the Seraphim is already approaching, which makes us all practically not relevant ultimately. And we will see what will happen once there is actually no way for the Seraphim to not be against the Straw Hat. And the thing I hope the most for personally is actually that it is neither, that the Seraphim will play neither a supportive nor an antagonistic role, that they will kind of do their own stuff, as it was shown here and there that the Seraphim have their own character, specifically was Hancock's clone, the S-Snake, the Snake Seraphim, that the Seraphim do carry the characteristics of the people whom they originate from, them being clones or copies of the 7 warlords of the Shichibukai. It will be interesting to see if they, to what extent, increased or decreased, they carry their capabilities, as they seem to have the Shichibukais, their originals, abilities, along with some devil fruits, that the originals do not even possess. On top to that, they also have other abilities, the Lunarian abilities extracted from King. So they have a bunch of wild abilities, making them just predestined to be OP characters in the One Piece world. But it will be interesting to see if, aside from these abilities, if they also have character traits, personality traits, that make them more than just puppets, because just being basically pacifista, being robots, mindless clones, weapons, I feel that's not the most satisfying way to see the Seraphim implemented into the story. I would really like to see them a bit more autonomous, a bit more wild, a bit more independent and acting out of their own. And to see this possibly turning in favor or against even the world government, and that would open up for them to become another faction, another force that needs to be reckoned with, that adds to the wild mix of unpredictability, which might spice up the story even further. And yeah, I think we will see very soon what their role is gonna be. I already theorized in a previous video. I think we will see a lot of different story threads, loose threads, not so slowly but very, very soon converge, as it is very suspicious that Oda choose to open up so many stories, seemingly separated stories, but actually in the One Piece world geographically kind of close. We have the confrontation between Law and the Blackbeard Pirates, the situation with the Revolutionary Army. Dragon was about to move out, but then suddenly Kuma, for whatever reason, activated, moved out, crashed into Marijo, and tried to climb the red line. There's also that situation between Kid and Shanks, Luffy's situation on Egghead Island. Now with Saint Jupiter approaching, Luffy having forged a temporary alliance with CP0. Bonnie, who's also the daughter of Kuma, and that's tying together. Also, we have the off chapter or background chapter being told through the cover pages of Caesar Clown and Judge, Sanji's father, Germa 66, having possibly forged an alliance as well, a scientist alliance, and possibly also being on their way to Vegapunk, to Egghead Island, which might add also to the wild mix of them possibly coming to Egghead Island. And then we have news reporter Morgan, what it seems like in his Zeppelin or his balloon, cruising around and spreading the news through birds or whatever means, and kind of being informed and observing on the Egghead Island situation. So this is really wild, and these situations being so connected and tied to each other, but also geographically in the One Piece world, geographically close to each other, indicates to me very, very heavily that these situations will converge. These story threads will start to slowly, not so slowly actually, I think in the next 3, 4, 5 to possibly 10 chapters, more and more merge, converge into a bigger scenario, a bigger situation, and then escalate as this current arc's finale. And even just looking at the events on Egghead Island, fans can already tell that the story's pacing has picked up. The story is progressing much faster. Yes, it feels like Oda could have saved, even now with the current pacing, he could have saved quite some time. He could have saved 2 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 chapters, not introducing so many Vegapunks, having the conflict with CP0 build up much quicker. But for Oda's standards, or for One Piece, what we as One Piece readers are used to or should be used to, this is relatively fast. This is relatively quick pacing, and we see how fast the situation on Egghead Island progresses. And if we think about what else is all happening in the background, we have an incredible unseen pacing in One Piece. So I really get the feeling that Oda wants to stick true to his word to really try to get One Piece to a finish, to an end, and I feel Oda is not gonna mess around much with the story. He laid out the loose threads that he's now trying to spin together. He's not going to introduce other major groups, pirate crews, organizations. We know all the Yonko, we know all the Shichibukai, the Seven Warlords, we know basically all the admirals, the structures, the important figures in the Marines, in the Revolutionary Army. We know the important pirate crews, the supporting forces, the antagonistic forces. We know pretty much the kingdoms, the situation. The story of One Piece is laid out. We got the final puzzle, the final important characters that we didn't know much about. Vegapunk. By now, I think we know all the most important characters, Imu aside. And I think Oda won't introduce any further characters. He's gonna make use of the characters that he has been introducing in the past 1060 chapters or so, and he's gonna use these pieces, these puzzle pieces, to play around and create a picture for us to read. But building on that, I think he has actually now the means to drive the plot forward without wasting time, wasting chapters on exploration and portrayal of characters, on building characters. Egghead Island, I don't think it's the final arc, but I think Egghead Island is the arc that opens up the final saga. We will most likely get a climax, the Egghead Island climax, which will then probably lead into a final arc. That might be the last or the second last arc, where there is an ultimate confrontation with the Marines and the world government and Imu, which will then actually be the final arc and also the finisher of this final saga. So I do believe that we are in the final saga, but not the final arc. So thank you very much for tuning in, and bye.